Chapter 6 The Adventure of the Speckled Band, Part 2. Holmes and Watson headed to Stoke Moran. They met Miss Stoner as she was walking across a field towards the house. Holmes told her that her stepdad knew she had visited Holmes that morning. He warned her to keep her door locked that night. They reached the house and Holmes began his investigation. Half the house was totally falling down, but the right wing where Miss Stoner and Roylott lived was in a pretty good condition. In fact, the house repairs seemed uncalled for, and Miss Stoner admitted that she thought Roylott had started the construction to make her move from her own bedroom into Julia's. It would be totally impossible to get into Miss Stoner's current room from the outside if the shutters were closed and barred from the inside. Holmes was baffled. They entered the room, and there Holmes noticed one or two very interesting points about it. The room itself was pretty bare, but there was a beautiful bell pull, newer than all the other things in the room, that was probably installed only a couple of years ago. But Julia never used it, nor did she ask for it to be put. As Holmes looked more minutely, he found that she couldn't have used it even if she wanted to, because it was not attached to anything. There was something else that was pretty uncanny apart from the fake bell pull. At the same time as the fake bell pull was installed, a new ventilating duct was placed in the wall of the room. However, it didn't go outside but led from Julia's bedroom to Roylott's. Holmes also looked into Roylott's room, which had a safe. Miss Stoner felt that the safe held his business papers, but Holmes thought otherwise. He suggested that an animal was inside because there was a saucer of milk on top of the safe. He also checked the seat of Roylott's chair and spotted a small dog whip hung on a corner of Roylott's bed, tied in a loop. Holmes seemed to have figured it all out by looking at these clues. He and Watson decided to spend the night in Miss Stoner's current room. She was asked to retire to bed early, pretending to have a headache, and then sneak quietly into her former bedroom despite the repairs for the evening. Holmes and Watson went to a nearby hotel room from which they could see Roylott's house. Holmes told Watson that he knew there was a ventilator between Julia and Roylott's bedrooms even before they had seen the house, as Julia had complained of the smell of her stepdad's cigar smoke the night she had died. Holmes also pointed out that it was pretty weird that the fake bell pull and the ventilator were both put in just around the time that Julia had died. What's more, her bed had been nailed to the floor so it couldn't be moved. All of this was evidence, Watson says, of some subtle and horrible crime. So Holmes and Watson settled in to watch the Stoke Moran house from their local inn until 11 p.m., when Miss Stoner lighted a lamp in her sister's bedroom window to signal to Holmes and Watson that she was heading over to her old bedroom. Holmes and Watson sneaked onto the estate. Watson was in for another surprise. He saw a baboon running across. The cheetah was also probably around somewhere too. Holmes and Watson crept quietly into Julia's former bedroom through the window. They locked the shutters behind them and turned off the light. They waited, wide awake. Watson also had his pistol ready for action. Finally, around 3 a.m., they saw a brief flash of light. A smell of burning oil and heated metal wafted in, and Watson realized that someone in the next room had lit a dark lantern. After half an hour, there was another tiny sound, like a jet of steam from a kettle. Holmes struck a match and started beating at the bell pull with his cane. Watson couldn't see what it was that Holmes was hitting, though he could see that Holmes' face was filled with disgust and horror. Holmes stopped with the cane, but he was watching the ventilator carefully. Suddenly, they heard a terrible yell. Holmes told Watson to bring his gun, and they entered Roylott's room. Roylott was dead, sitting in his wooden chair with that small leather dog whip across his chest. Around his forehead was a weird yellow band with brown spots, a band that moved. It was, in fact, a snake, an Indian swamp adder. Holmes grabbed the dog whip from Roylott's body and used the loop tied at the end as a noose to catch the snake and put it back in the safe. Such were the trace facts of the death of Dr. Grimsby Roylott. As for the terrified Miss Stoner, she was taken to the care of her good aunt at Harrow. The coroner decided that Roylott's death was the result of an accident while playing with a dangerous pet. Holmes explained the rest of the case to Watson. Holmes admitted that he had started out on a completely wrong track. He also thought the Speckled Band reference was probably to the gypsy group living on Roylott's land. But Holmes realized that he was wrong when he saw how impossible it would be to get into the room from the outside. Once he saw the ventilator, the bell pull, and the nailed-down bed, he figured that the ventilator must be some kind of a bridge for something to travel between the two rooms. The whole snake thing then seemed obvious, especially given Roylott's history in India. As for the whistle, Roylott probably trained the snake to respond to a whistle to make it return to his room before it could be seen by its victim if it didn't bite her right away. In Roylott's room, Holmes saw signs that suggested the doctor's modus operandi. Roylott would stand on his chair to get access to the ventilator, the safe, the milk, and the whipcord all pointed to the training and management of this dangerous animal. The clang Miss Stoner heard the night before was the sound of Roylott quickly closing the door of the safe to shut in the snake. And the rest is history. By attacking the snake and sending it back to its owner, Holmes was probably responsible for the animal striking out at Roylott on the other side of the vent. However, the detective never felt too bad about that.